Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Deciphering My Experience. My name is Eric, and it's a wonderful day. I have fantastic news for everybody about an upcoming episode. But first, I want to remind everybody to please like, subscribe, share, and comment. It does help. So do everything that you can to support this page and every other producer of content out there that you follow. We really need it now. The mass media is working hard to keep us down and out, and the big platforms just aren't really a fan of the truth, and the power of the edit is strong. So make sure that you help out the folks that are putting the information out there that you appreciate and get it around. But I want to let everybody know that this upcoming Monday, which is October 4th, I believe, I'm going to have a very special guest on. This is going to be a big one. I have been talking behind the scenes for a while with this gentleman, and we're going to be going live on Monday at 1 o'clock Alaska time, 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And I will be speaking with Dr. Stephen Greer of the Disclosure Project. He and I have had a wonderful conversation about what's going on at the South Pole Station and other things in the world. And we see eye to eye on a fistful of things. And we're looking to continue the conversation and make our information and exchange privy to the world. So this should be a very interesting conversation, and I believe it will bear a lot of fruit and a lot of dots will be connected. So tune in Monday, 1 o'clock Alaska time, 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and I'll be live on the air with Dr. Stephen Greer. And some of the topics will be really similar to some of the stuff that I'm going to be going over today. The let's see if I can get the first thing I want to talk about up here. Well, the thing that I want to talk about, I should say, today is that here we have, once again in the news, let me get this for you. We have lawmakers back changes at CIA for handling mystery health episodes. Pretty interesting. This is what I keep talking about. So the other day, I put out some links. The most recent one was a link in the archives. Go to deciphering.tv. I'll put a link below, but check out the document in the archives section. Directed Energy Threat Emergency Response Act, folks. This is, I call it DTERRA for short. DTERRA is basically the disclosure for directed energy weapons. You know, while they're talking in one side about they're talking in one breath about, you know, UAP disclosure, UFO disclosure, which isn't really disclosure, but boy is it it's the circus, how they play games. You know, they turn a light on over here, they pay attention to disclosure, but what they don't do is they don't have you look over here and see the Directed Energy Threat Emergency Response Act. They don't want you to pay attention to DTERRA, which is effectively Star Wars is going on. There's weapons of war that they do not wish to discuss with you. They don't want you to know exactly what's going on. But because our government officials work for the government, and when they get wounded on the clock, the government is responsible to take care of them. That means they have to do due diligence and figure things out. So that DTERRA document lays out where the government is right now on identifying the problem and mitigating the hazard. But let's take a look at this article today. Lawmakers back changes at CIA for handling mystery health episodes. Legislation approved by a House committee would also offer intelligence officials medical scans before transfer overseas to better diagnose Havana syndrome injuries. Turn you off for a second. There we go. Let's see here. The House Intelligence Committee approved a bipartisan proposal on Thursday to provide additional resources to help find the cause of Havana syndrome illness and take steps to review the CIA's handling of the mysterious episodes that have injured more than 200 government officials. In previous documents, folks, I have shown that they're now calling it AHI, Anomalous Health Incidents. Back to the article. The measure would overhaul the agency's Office of Medical Services and create a voluntary system where CIA officers assigned overseas could first receive brain scans and lab work that would help doctors determine the extent of their injuries should they later exhibit symptoms consistent with Havana syndrome or report being victims of a health episode. I find that paragraph very interesting because part of going to the South Pole Station required that we had to do a baseline psych and basically brain check. And through going through the eval, I felt very much that this did very little to determine somebody's capability to winter at the South Pole Station, was my experience. I felt very much that it seemed more like they were just taking a baseline for us, that there was no way to determine if somebody was predisposed to excel or be a detriment in the winter at South Pole Station. There was no parameters. So they were just taking a baseline for us. And I believe they were taking a baseline for us because they absolutely understood what facility we were at and what we were doing and what the dangers were that they would have to deal with and possibly mitigate in the future. Back to the article. The measure comes as some intelligence officers have expressed reticence about accepting foreign posts or bringing their family members on tours in countries where the episodes have taken place, current and former officials said. I think as long as these incidents are occurring with what seems to be increasing frequency, without the identification of a perpetrator and without the ability to stop them, I think those concerns are going to continue, said Representative Adam B. Schiff, Democrat of California and the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. Boy, that's an interesting section right there, because right here we're talking about this is activity, folks. This isn't a threat. This is something's going on. And yet in the UAP disclosure direction, we keep having the word threat thrown around, like as if we need to be scared of impending coming doom. That's being discussed, but this right here is not making the mainstream media, and this is active warfare. This isn't a threat. This is active violence. A U.S. official said CIA officers had volunteered in large numbers to work on the issue of the health episodes, eager to find answers. Since 2016, diplomats, intelligence officers, and military personnel in Asia, Europe, and the Americas have reported hearing strange sounds, feeling unexplained heat, or experiencing pressure and then suffering headaches, nausea, vertigo, or other symptoms. In many cases, the symptoms have gone on for months or years. Folks, I'm going to jump right in on this paragraph and tell you that they're being very vague when they say things like hearing strange sounds. Yeah, it's called voices in your head, folks. That's the voice to skull, and that's a technology that exists. But they're going to just gloss over it right there by saying things as vague as hearing strange sounds. Yeah, hearing your own voice in your head and knowing thyself is something that we're going to have to get accustomed to because the technology exists, and they're going to be messing with people more fast and more furiously. Back to the article. While some government officials are convinced that a hostile intelligence service using an eavesdropping device or a directed energy weapon is responsible for the injuries, CIA analysts have not reached a conclusion about what is causing the episodes or if a hostile power is responsible. How do they know this isn't coming from the UFOs? You know, I mean, in the grand scheme of having honest conversations and all possibilities existing always, I mean, how do we know that there's not a unidentified flying object around there doing something to our elected officials? Who knows? While the agency's director, William J. Burns, has been praised for the attention and resources he has put toward victims of Havana syndrome, Congress has been critical of how the CIA and the larger U.S. government handled the cases before this year. The Intelligence Committee is doing its own investigation, and the bill approved on Thursday mandates an inspector general review of the performance of the CIA's medical division and sets up an outside advisory board to examine its work. We want accountability, Mr. Schiff said. It took too long to get to where we are. Too many people were suffering, not getting the help that they needed, and not being believed. So we're still making up for lost ground. Do you hear that, folks? This is reality. This is an admittance from the government of what's been really going on. For years, too many people were suffering, not getting the help that they needed, and not being believed. This technology is real, folks. Mark E. Polymeropoulos, a senior CIA officer at the time, was injured in Moscow in 2017, but did not receive effective treatment until after he retired and began seeing doctors this year at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. The bottom line is that traumatic brain injury does not get better over time. So I and others suffered unnecessarily. Mr. Polymeropoulos said, "We made a pact with the CIA. When we would do tough things and get jammed up, they would have our back." That's an interesting line right there. Doug Wise, a former top intelligence official who has been critical of the CIA's handling of the health episodes during the Trump administration, said it was important for reviews to look at how top CIA officials handled the episodes and why officers' reports were not initially taken seriously. I think it is important. I think it is an important thing for the committee to mandate a review. For whatever reason, the agency is incapable of doing their own look because they are unwilling to hold their own leaders accountable, Mr. Wise said. The only thing the victims asked for was respect, compassion, and medical treatment. This year, Mr. Burns removed the head of the Office of Medical Services, replacing him with a doctor focused on patient care. Former intelligence officials have said the office is more focused on victim care since that change. The House measure is aimed at further improving care for intelligence officers by raising pay for the agency's doctors, mandating outside clinical training, and creating an advisory board appointed by Congress and the Director of National Intelligence. Boy, it doesn't sound like much of a cure to me. The Senate version of the bill does not have the precise provisions of the House measure, but the Senate Intelligence Committee is likely to support the measure, congressional officials said. Asked about the House measure, a CIA spokeswoman said the agency recognized the committee's work and looked forward to seeing the final provisions. This month, Congress overwhelmingly passed a measure drafted by Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, to provide additional resources for victims of Havana syndrome, a sign of the broad bipartisan support for bills addressing the issue. Still, House and Senate leaders will need to find a legislative vehicle in which to include a final intelligence authorization bill by the end of the year. At least 100 CIA officers have been injured and suffered symptoms consistent with Havana syndrome since 2016, when diplomats and intelligence officers in Cuba reported hearing strange sounds or sensing pressure before experiencing headaches, nausea, and other symptoms. Those episodes were followed by others in China and elsewhere in the world. In many cases, doctors treating people exhibiting symptoms of Havana syndrome have struggled to identify the extent of the injuries because they lack brain scans from before the episodes as points of comparison. Getting a brain scan or doing medical lab work before deploying overseas would be voluntary under the measure approved by the House committee. Collecting such before and after information could be critical to both improving treatments and identifying the cause, Mr. Schiff said. The absence of knowing the baseline impairs the diagnosis, Mr. Schiff said. People have different baselines, and it would be useful to know what those look like, to see how things have changed. Interesting, huh, folks? Brain scans, mind manipulation, high technology, things that aren't being discussed in the main media. It just really makes me wonder. You know, all this talk about UFOs and the threat that may be, but here we are. We're taking fire from some direction. We have an unknown enemy that our government is discussing. The agents of our government are being negatively impacted by this technology. I have a lot of thoughts on it. I have a lot of questions about it. I'm going to do my best to get all of the answers and get the dots connected. I'm doing what I can to share the information from my experiences and break down the walls of compartmentalization that seem to be all over the place. So I'm going to do the best I can. Help me share that information, pass it around. Tune in on Monday, and I'll have Dr. Stephen Greer on. I'm also in talks with Stuart Swerdlow to try to get him on, and I think that'll help people see that there's a lot more going on and connect a lot more dots. So we'll get there. South Pole Station, UFOs, time travel, ancient history, Brookhaven National Labs. I mean, stuff going on in Alaska. Everywhere I go, it seems like there's compartments that people aren't paying attention to. So let's get everything all connected. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please like, subscribe, share. go to Patreon, PayPal. If you can support in that capacity, I'd really appreciate it. Have an excellent day, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.